I'm based in Wisconsin, so obviously we have CBD, no Delta-9, but Delta-8
Mhm.
is legal.
Yeah.
Um, I personally, kind of have some issues with it in terms of, it's not something you can grow. It's
Yeah.
something that requires extensive preparation. And now I'm even seeing products that are taking hemp and like
Mhm.
squeezing out whatever Delta-9 they can find out of it and then selling it, federally. It's like an ad on
Mhm.
YouTube or something.
Yeah.
Um, this is a society that is screaming for legalization,
It
and
really is. Yeah.
these little workarounds. I don't think I don't know if they I was wondering if you had any thought on them, because they
Mhm.
kind of feel like, okay, the pharmaceutical industry or those that are wealthier can process and do these things, but the average person can't just have a plant in their backyard.
Right, right. So yeah, the Delta-8 stuff and everything happening in the hemp market, it's weird for a few reasons. One, so that Delta-9 that you see on the hemp market, I can almost promise you that most of that is actually produced in the process of making Delta-8 THC. So when you're making Delta-8 THC, well, I want to clarify a couple things. So
Sure, sure.
one thing that often gets kind of floated around that people get confused about is Delta-8 naturally occurring or not? That's a big question that pops up a lot on LinkedIn. I see it, a lot of professionals trying to understand, is Delta-8 natural or not? Delta-8 THC you will find on the cannabis plant naturally, because THCA will decarboxylate to THC over time with exposure to light and heat and other things. Just naturally, that THC will transform to Delta-8 THC, usually on its way to CBN. Um, However, none of the Delta-8 on the hemp market is naturally derived at all. It's all derived from CBD. And the process to get to Delta-8 from CBD is you take CBD, usually mix it, dissolve it in an acid bath. There's different acids that different folks will use. And everyone, there are several different kind of recipes for doing this, but you're basically putting CBD in an acid bath and forcing some relatively natural transformations to happen. And the first thing that happens is if you're familiar with the molecule of CBD, it has an open ring in it. So it's what's called a bicyclical cannabinoid, as opposed to THC, which is a tricyclical cannabinoid because it has 3 complete rings in the molecule. So CBD's ring structure is open. When you put it in an acid bath, that ring structure closes. And when it closes, you get THC, Delta-9 THC. Then as Delta-9 THC continues to be exposed to these acids, you get this double bond in the Delta-9 THC molecule to just switch places, and then you have Delta-8 THC. So Delta-9 THC is an intermediate product on the way to Delta-8 THC. So what I've wondered, because back when Delta-8 THC first really started to be produced, I always wondered, I was like, what do they do with the Delta-9 THC that they inevitably are making? And it took a couple of years before someone got bold enough to say, oh, this is naturally hemp-derived Delta-9 THC. But finally, people started doing that, and nothing happened. The DEA didn't do anything. The FDA didn't do anything, except issue some like vague responses telling people to refer to the text of the Farm Bill. And so now you see Delta-9 THC showing up in the hemp market, and I guarantee you, it's a byproduct of all of these Delta-8. And now that people know that they can stop at Delta-9, it's actually more efficient for them to just make Delta-9 than it is to make Delta-8. So, there's these weird incentives for that. What worries me about all of this is, from my perspective, working on the analytical chemistry side, right. I've tested quite a few quote unquote Delta-8. They call them Delta-8 distillates. I don't consider them true distillates, really. But that's the whole other story. But anyway, we'd have people bring in these Delta-8 THC distillates, and I'd test them. And the Delta-8 THC would show up at like 30%. And then there'd be all these other peaks on the chromatograms, which are these charts that, show you that there are molecules in a sample. And so we'd go back and we'd say, hey, your stuff tested at 30% Delta-8 THC. And then they come back and yell at us and say, that's impossible. You're stupid. You don't know what you're doing. This stuff should be 90%. And then we'd have to show them the chromatograms and say, well, we can only accurately identify one of these peaks as Delta-8 THC. Look at all of these other peaks. We don't know what those chemicals are. We don't know what you've made. All we know is that only 30% of it is actually the molecule you think it is.